Hi guys, and welcome back to another video for PSO2 NGS. In today's video, what I'm really looking at is the recent changes that Sega have made to the Bouncer class. So if you didn't see it, in the 6th of December update, Sega actually completely overhauled Bouncer, which I was quite glad to see because I always felt that Bouncer was quite an underpowered class that needed a bit more work doing to it. So in today's video, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cover some of the changes just for people who might not be aware of what's happened to it. So first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the Soaring Blades. So Soaring Blades have actually received a massive change to how they work. I have done a video on Soaring Blades previously, so if you want to look at that, it's still on my channel. I will leave it up there because a lot of the things on there are still relevant. But there are a couple of things that have changed with Soaring Blades, so will be some things in that guide that are outdated now. So main changes to Soaring Blades. So I've got the list of changes up here. So the first thing is they've changed how the Fanatic Blade skill works. So Fanatic Blade, the way this used to work was it was an active skill you used from your sub palette, and when it was active, as you'll know, when you do your weapon action with Soaring Blade, you'll fire some Photon Blades at the enemies. The way Fanatic Blade used to work was that once it was activated, for a certain period of time, you could basically spam that and just continually spam the Photon Blades. The problem with it was it actually wasn't that comfortable to do because you were trying to spam your weapon action while you were doing everything else, and it didn't feel intuitive to do at all. So what they've done is they've completely changed how Fanatic Blade works. So the way it works now is, again, you still activate it from your sub palette, but now when you activate, what it does is any photon arts that you use while it's activated will add extra Photon Blades to them. So just to show you this, so if I do, for example, I'll do this Photon art here. So again, I'll just show you that again over here. You can see we get the Photon Blade circling around us, but we don't actually fire any additional ones off. But then if I use Fanatic Blade and do the same Photon art again, you can see it's now firing extra darts. So again, I'll do that again for you. So you get some there, and some additional ones there. And this applies to any Photon art as well. So you see, just every so often we're getting those extra targets, those extra hits from the Photon Blades. So that's how they've changed Fanatic Blade. I personally feel like that's quite a big improvement, just in terms of how comfortable the class is to play. I used to find quite often that trying to use Fanatic Blade and spam the weapon action while you were doing everything else, it could actually I actually had it a couple of times where it would actually cramp my hand up a little bit because you were trying to do so much at once. I feel that doing this where they've just added the extra hits into your Photon art, it makes it a lot more fluid. So I'm really happy with that change overall. So that's the first change that they've made. Second one is to a skill called Blade Arts Parry. So now what you can do is, if you successfully parry an attack, you can then actually use the same skill again during the same Photon art. So it effectively allows you to parry multiple times within the same Photon art, providing that you parry correctly. So it rewards you for parrying well. I really like that change because the parry on Soaring Blades was always one of the big problems I had with it. It was really, really tight timing frame for it, and it just never felt that useful. And even if you got it, the parry that you got out of it didn't even seem that strong. So having the ability to actually hit it multiple times in the same Photon art is actually really cool. So next up we have, so it's a skill that it used to be called Blade SC Alternation. I'm looking over here because I've got all the notes up to my left. So they've actually changed the name of that skill now. So instead of Blade SC Alternation, it's now called Blade Counter Alternation. And they've changed it so that it now also applies after a successful dodge via weapon action. So this is where you get the first hint that the weapon action's changed, because the weapon action previously, if you go back and look at my other video, I may even splice some of that footage in. It used to just put like a parry frame up around you, regardless of whether you're moving or staying still. So now, if you dodge with the weapon action, you also get the same effect. So I think now is a pretty good time to cover how they've changed the weapon action. So it has completely changed. So, as I've said previously, it used to just be that you would get a parry frame around you that would allow you to parry for a very short period of time. So the way that works now is, if you do it while you're standing still, you'll do a backdash and fire a couple of photon blades off. So this is quite good for if an enemy's about to hit you, you can kind of get some distance from them quickly and also hit them while you're retreating. You can also input a direction with it as well. So if I do it without being locked on and do it while I'm hitting left, and right, left, right, forward, back. And you can see it is actually quite spammable now as well. And what you also notice as well is that the distance that you actually cover with it is huge now. You get a very, very big repositioning from it, which means it's not even good just for dodging now. It's actually good for just repositioning your character. So, for example, on the new Lucille boss, the False Angel, if it does this attack where it covers the ground in these sort of exploding energy balls, what you can do with dual blades is jump into the air, lock on, and then just dash round. You do lose a little bit of height between each weapon action, but you can stay in the air for quite a while with it. Just makes it incredibly useful. And as I've said previously, this blade counter alternation now applies if you actually dodge this attack as well. So instead of just getting the parry frame, I should note as well though that it still does have a parry frame. So if you do the weapon action perfectly at the right time, you will still get that parry available. It's just that they've now given you this extra part to it, which is even if you don't get the actual parry, you can still use this to dodge. And from what I've tested, it does seem like you have quite a lot of iframes in this dodge. It seems from the little bit of testing that I've done is that you seem to be vulnerable at the very start of the dodge and the very end of it, but during the middle of it, you're pretty much invulnerable. So it does make it a very, very mobile weapon because you can just reposition really quickly with it. But that's probably the biggest change to Soaring Blades, and it is an absolute game changer. The big problem I had with Soaring Blades was that the weapon action just didn't like how it worked at all. And I think they've absolutely saved it by changing it to this. It's a lot more similar now to the original PSO2 Soaring Blades weapon action. So next thing they've changed is Photon Blade Protect. So that has now been changed to Blade Art Alternation. And they've changed it so that pressing a different photon art at just the right time while performing a photon art will unleash the form's variant attack. So this is really interesting. So what you can actually do with Soaring Blades now is you can switch between different photon arts. So you can do the first half of one photon art and the second half of another. So for example, normally if I just let this photon art continue and do both parts, I'll do this, and then you've got the aerial part for the second part. But if I do the first part and then switch to a different photon art now, you can see I can just transition into the second part of a different photon art altogether. Again, if I do this and then, or if I do this and then this, and it allows you to be a lot more flexible. So for example, with this photon art here where you do the dash, there was a little bit of a delay to it, whereas now you can just go by using a different photon art beforehand, so you can very quickly just alternate into it. It just makes it massively useful. And it means that Soaring Blades are actually a lot more versatile now because you can actually use them in a lot more situations now. So they were quite limiting before because you would basically locked into which photon art you would use. So you would use this and then you knew that you had to alternate into this. Whereas now, depending on what the enemy's doing, you can alternate into something completely different. So say, for example, you start doing that photon art and then the enemy gets downed. You can then go and alternate into this and do the main DPS. That's incredibly useful for Soaring Blades. Next thing they've changed is Pinion Blade. So Pinion Blade is this skill on the bar down here, and it builds up as you use your Photon Blade attacks. So what I'll do is I'll quickly charge that up. So it is quite extensive, the changes overall to Soaring Blades. They have done a ton of different changes to it. They have changed jet boots a little bit as well, but the bulk of the changes, I would say, are mainly for Soaring Blades, which I'm happy with because I feel that Soaring Blades were the weapon that needed it the most. Boots were in a situation where they were actually not too bad. Okay, so we've got Pinion Blade charge now. So Pinion Blade, as I've said, all they've done is they've just upped the damage of it. So you can see 41,000 damage. Now, admittedly, this is on a training target that has really low stats, but even on bosses, it is hitting really, really hard now. That's Pinion Blade. There is also some buffs to jet boots as well. So for jet boots, they have increased the potency of jet boots element set. They've increased the potency of boot trick bounce counter. They've adjusted it is adjusted the performance. I'm not sure how they've changed that exactly of thrust drive, and they've increased the potency of jet sweep jolt. They've also extended the duration of jet sweep jolt rapid boost and jet sweep jolt PP save. And then there's a couple of miscellaneous changes that just apply to the weapons in general. So for both weapons, it says they've adjusted the attack effects. Now, from what I can tell, to me, I don't know if this is true, but it feels like Soaring Blades attack faster now. If you compare this to my previous video, this seems quite a lot faster. They've also, as you might be able to tell, they've also quite beefed the damage up as well. So it does say that they've adjusted the performance of normal attacks and Fortinarts. So all of the Fortinarts for every single weapon have been buffed. Both the bouncer weapons and all the normal attacks have been buffed as well. And then it does mention that they've changed the motion of the weapon action for blades and adjusted the performance. So obviously the change in the motion is that they've changed it to this. The performance means that essentially the iframes are a lot longer now, and the parry's a lot more comfortable to do. The timing to get the perfect parry seems a lot easier to do now. And it's a lot more reliable, I find now. So I'm really, really happy with the changes they've made to Soaring Blades, and I feel like they're actually a really, really strong weapon now. To the point where I've actually been doing really, really reasonable DPS with them now in comparison to my other classes. So I'm really happy with those changes. I said that the changes for boots they're definitely not as noticeable. So the main difference really is, so with boots, the main ones that they've touched, they haven't actually adjusted the Fortinarts apart from just buffing the potency of them. But it's mainly the skills that they've changed for jet boots. So if we go down to for thrust drive, they've adjusted the performance. So this is where you do a normal attack after a technique and it will cause you to charge. So they've adjusted the potency of that attack. And then element set is when you get additional attacks by using element that corresponds to techniques. Again, I haven't actually done a jet boots guide yet. I was meant to do one, but then when Sega announced all the changes, I thought I may as well wait until the changes have been done, because it seemed pointless doing a guide for it to just be changed straight away. There will be a jet boots guide coming out within the next week or so. So I'll go into this in more detail then. But the main thing I wanted to look at with this is mainly the changes to Soaring Blades, because they have been so extensively changed. So overall, it is massive, massive buff to Bouncer Wrath, I feel. The damage seems a lot better now. The weapon action, the adjustments to that just seem incredibly useful and just makes it a much more versatile weapon. And the fact that you can now alternate between the different parts of the Fortinarts just makes it a very, very comfortable class to use now. And I'm really happy with this. I'm hoping that Sega now look at the other classes and maybe for some other classes that are a little bit behind, maybe buff those as well and make some changes. I personally would like them to see them look at Tekka a little bit more. And just that, because I feel Tekka is a little bit of a boring class, to be honest. And I kind of feel like it just needs a bit more. I'd like to see them look at Talus and Launcher as well for Ranger. That's my personal ones. I'd also honestly like to see them completely rework Gunner, because I don't find Gunner fun at all. And I kind of feel like Gunner needs a complete rework. But that's my personal opinion. But I'll end this one there for now. If you've got any questions at all about any of the changes, just leave them in the comments. I will try and answer what I can. I mainly wanted to look at the Soaring Blade changes for this, just so people are aware of how much the weapon has changed since that last video that I did. As usual, any comments, leave them in the comments below. I'll answer whatever I can. If you've enjoyed the video, please consider liking or subscribing. It really, really does help the channel out. But for the meantime, I'll see you guys in the next video.